Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Extra Point here on ESPN 1600. As always, I'm your host, Roland Rainey, and I am beyond excited for today because on today's episode, we have someone who is definitely has dedicated his life to the service of the NFL, and that is 1981 fifth round draft pick as a center to the Detroit Lions, Mr. Larry Lee. Mr. Lee, welcome to the Extra Point. How are we doing today?
I'm good, Roland. How about you, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, and we are beyond excited to have you on the show. So before we deep dive into the reason why we wanted to bring you onto the show today, as a former player, especially from your position and looking at the NFL in this season, especially with the pandemic, I wanted to get your take for our audience on how well you think the NFL handled the pandemic and the players, going into quarantine and coming out and going back onto the field.
I think the NFL has done a magnificent job considering the nature of the sport, considering it being a contact sport, and you're in piles and you're in each other's face and et cetera, et cetera. And so obviously they've had to have done a good job of testing to realize who has it and who doesn't. And, there could always be a hit or miss in there. But, the way that they handled it with each club and their guys during the club, and they had to make some tough calls like this past weekend with, the Cleveland coach being out and a couple weeks before, with the Lions half their staff out and the coach not being able to coach. So some tough calls in there. So this year has definitely been the exception to the rule. But I think they've handled it well, to answer your question, and they were able to keep the season alive and without a true shutdown. The Steelers might not agree with all the stuff they went through a few weeks ago,
right?
With the changing of the game and moving it to Tuesday to Monday to, whatever, Wednesday kind of thing. But overall, yes, you have to give them a good grade for doing well.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I think, and you hit the nail on the head when you talk about a contact sport in a pandemic environment. Trying to put rules together, I think is way different than being in a bubble like the NBA. So the way the league has handled it, especially making sure that they enforce the rules with wearing a mask, you do have to give the NFL executive staff a thumbs up on how they've handled this. Now, for everyone listening in, Mr. Larry Lee is also an executive with the Fritz Pollard Alliance. And the Fritz Pollard Alliance is an organization that helps promote and also monitor the promotion and the pushing minorities into various positions in the NFL. So what I want to do is, when I look at your role in the Alliance, I want to give the audience a take of what's your role, how do you see the Alliance and its relationship currently with the NFL owners and the commissioner?
Well, I am an assistant to Rod Graves, who is the executive director at Fritz Pollard Alliance. Many of you folks, NFL folks, will remember that name. Rod was the general manager of the Arizona Cardinals.
That's right.
When they went to the Super Bowl. And but Rod was also a longtime NFL scout with the Bears. And then he left the Cardinals and went to the Jets and then the league office. So Rod and I go way back when I was a pro personnel scout for the Lions and Rod was a scout for the Bears. We were in the same division. Two African-American men, getting to know one another kind of thing, and vowed that one day we might be able to work together. And Fritz Pollard Alliance has given us that avenue to do that. The league, our relationship with the league is great. The Fritz Pollard Alliance was started by Cyrus Mary, a civil rights attorney, and Johnny Cochran, the late Johnny Cochran. They started it, and John Wooten was the former NFL player. John Wooten was the guy that headed it up for several years, who just retired a year ago, and that's when Rod took over.
Right.
And they've had a great relationship with the NFL as far as the vetting of minority candidates and making sure that owners and general managers know the African American list of potential guys that are ready and able for these jobs. So Rod and I are trying to take it to the next level with advocacy in the community. With a lot of different programs where we're training and getting guys ready for the interviews and for the jobs. Like presently, some of the African Americans that you're hearing that are up for jobs, most of them are being mentored or coached by Rod and I giving advice and getting them ready for these interviews. And we've had some success. Andrew Berry at the Cleveland Browns is a gentleman that Rod mentored, and now he's a general manager in Cleveland. And there's a few other hot names out there right now that we're going through the process with, and hopefully we will begin to change some minds and get some owners more apt to hire minorities in these positions.
Yes, and to your point, when you mentioned the individuals and the pioneers who helped forge the efforts for Fritz Pollard Alliance, for a lot of folks out there, this was the catalyst for making sure that the Rooney Rule was put in place. And it's great to see that there are folks like you, Mr. Lee, and also Mr. Graves, who are out there really ensuring that minorities are getting a fair shake and a fair opportunity. And because you mentioned that, I really want to break down some stats and get your perspective. So currently, diversity-wise in the NFL, we're looking at about 70% African American players in the league office, 10% African American amongst head coaches, about 9%. And then in the general manager realm, we're looking at 6%. So when I look at, your strategic efforts of networking, mentoring, encouraging adoption of many of the rules to foster diversity, also educating the team owners and the commissioner. When I look at those numbers, what exactly is the FPA working towards to ensure people like Roger Goodell and the other owners are really putting forth a solid effort to interview very qualified minorities for these positions?
One of the things that is really helping, Rod spent a few years at the league office himself, working directly with Roger and Troy. So there's a great relationship there. And I got to honestly say that this year, sports usually mimics society.
Right.
So this year there's obviously a microscope put on the NFL and minorities and everything because of society. But I can honestly say that we have gotten nothing but full out cooperation from Troy and the league office. But ultimately, it's the owners that have to make the decisions about hiring minorities. So we're trying to break down that wall or that barrier or get them more comfortable and more familiar with people of color so that, people do business with people they're comfortable with. So obviously those numbers that you stated are not adequate enough or good enough, and so we need to improve upon that. And part of the way we think we can improve is a two-prong approach. On the outside, getting them more familiar with African-American candidates, et cetera. But then on the inside, we're making sure that the candidates that we present are vetted. And in football, we use the term RPO. We want to make sure that they're ready and prepare for opportunity. That's
Oh, that is
our
awesome.
RPO.
That's a great acronym
Yeah,
there. uh,
yeah. So that's what we're working on. We're taking Fritz Pollard to another level with community advocacy and community programs, et cetera, et cetera. So we want it to be a true partnership between us and the NFL.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the things about the Fritz Pollard Alliance is you have this 5 point plan for club leaders and the commissioner and owners. And for the audience out there, one of those plans is seize the moment. The second one is having a written compact. Number three is building player leadership structure. Four is building a program. I know this is called Talking Tuesday. So the players can talk about a social issue that they can wrap their arms around and put effort towards. And then the last one is basically seizing the ballot, making sure players also, much like we saw in November, advocating for community members along with members in the league to get out and vote. So amongst this 5 point plan, how do you, as an executive at FPA, how do you reach out to players to make sure that they stay active within your outreach programs?
Well, one of the things, one of our plights is that although Fritz Pollard is a very important entity, we feel it's still somewhat under the radar. And so we have to make sure that Fritz Pollard is a brand that we improve upon, and we want Fritz Pollard to be a household name, not only throughout NFL but sports period. So we are working on some projects and some things that will have us all come together and make Fritz Pollard more of a household name. I'm getting a little sidetracked on that, but yes, we got to get Fritz Pollard out there. We got to make sure people know what we do and what it's all about. So we're developing programs as we speak with companies all over the country and the NFL and putting together a staff and thoughts where our outreach will be pretty enormous.
On top of the outreach, when it comes to owners and general managers, to include the
Yeah.
commissioner, what type of, I guess, meetings or organizational gatherings do you all put together to make sure that you also inform them of some of your efforts?
Well, there's been several entities that have happened. Obviously, COVID has slowed us down quite a bit on some things, but NFL events like the Combine, at the draft, at the Super Bowl, Fritz Pollard, we're preparing events as we speak to like I said, break down the barriers at league meetings. We want to get candidates in front of owners at league meetings and the Combine and when everybody's under one roof, have general managers get to know some of the potential candidates so they can consider them as defensive and offensive coordinators. So it's all about relationships, and we're trying to help build more relationships. Between Rod and I, we got a pretty good reach on a lot of folks in the NFL, but with the help of Troy and the league office and people at the league office, at these events, we're setting up programs like we had the quarterback summit where, guys like Doug Williams and other guys gave examples and seminars to a lot of the guys that are up and coming.
Okay.
More so dealing with the quarterback position. But we also this summer had a coaches seminar scenario where we had veteran NFL coaches of color speak to potential candidates and talk to young and up and coming NFL coaches to give them some tips on how to handle their rooms and what to look for, how to handle their staffs, et cetera, et cetera. And we also did it on the executive level where we had general managers like Rick Spielman and Thomas Dimitrov and guys give seminars to up and coming potential NFL executives. So we presently we have 5 former general managers like Scott Pioli, Jerry Reese. Who else is it? Jerry Reese, Scott Pioli, Ray Farmer, and guys like that are reaching out and preparing some of these guys, up and coming guys, for these interviews and teaching them and showing them, what to expect, how to answer the questions. And Rod Graves himself is just an amazing guy that, with all the experience that he has, he's really a gem to hand it up to help guys. And I got a few years under my belt, myself, and a few relationships, so I'm helping out as well. And you're out there in Colorado, and I got a special place in my heart for Denver because, I played for the Broncos.
Yes, you finished your careers there, right?
Yeah, I've ended my career in Denver. I snapped the ball to John Elway a few times.
There you go. History there. Well, I tell you, the things about Fritz Pollard, and for the listeners out there, I really want you all to go to the Fritz Pollard Alliance website and really learn more about this organization, and especially its history. When you talk about the organization and it's being named after the first African-American head coach in the NFL, who was actually a part and played for the Akrons back in the day, to have an organization like this that is promoting the promotion and opportunities for minorities, you definitely should go out and see what they're doing, be actively involved, and be in the know of what Fritz Pollard is up to, because I think this is important. And to your point, Mr. Lee, that you made earlier, is when you look at those numbers, 70% to league and head coaches percentage of 10 and 9, and then 6% in the general manager range, you definitely want to make sure that we are providing those folks the opportunities and promoting leadership amongst African Americans in the NFL. Now, speaking of leadership in the NFL, and I don't know if we can get into this or not, but a lot of my listeners know out there I do my homework. And recently I just read an article, just recently. And in that article, it stated that the NFL Football Association up in Detroit was advocating on your behalf to become the next general manager for the Detroit Lions. Is that something that you can speak about?
Yes. Well, early in when the Lions first let Patricia and Quinn go, several of the Lions alumni got together and wrote a letter on my behalf to Sheila Ford Hamp, requesting that I be a candidate for the general manager's position. I have had conversations with the Lions, not necessarily on a general manager interview, because they really have stated that they're looking for a general manager with experience, one that has been a general manager before, because they feel that they need that for their organization. So I don't fit that bill, but I am very much in tune and in touch with the Detroit Lions brass. It's home. It's where I got drafted. I spent, 5 years as a player and 9 years as an executive, with the Lions. So I am a Lion, even though I did play for the Dolphins and the Broncos. But I am a Lion, and so I'm not being considered for the general manager's position, but I am very much in touch and in tune with the organization, and who knows if there maybe is another opportunity that might prevail or present itself.
Well, we definitely wish you luck with that because I think right now, looking at the Lions and what they're trying to do, it appears that they're trying to put some of that front office leadership, put those pieces together, strong leadership up front to get them where they need to go. And it's great that they have folks like you that they can rely on to help guide them through that process. Before we end today's session, I want to go back to your strategic efforts with Fritz Pollard. And one of them we talked about was mentoring. There's a lot of young players coming out of college. You call them in their freshman year. They have these freshman seminars. And then, of course, some of them handle it very well. And then there's some, it's a huge change of lifestyle for them. Not just the demanding requirements that are put on their bodies and showing up to practice and getting that part done. But then there's also the how do you handle yourself as a professional side. So what are some things that you have seen personally or some things that you have done personally to actually handle the pressures of being on that large stage?
Well, one of the things that Fritz Pollard is doing is, there's a newly formed players coalition now that the current players have. And Rod Graves is having several conversations with them about linking up and coming together with mentors, et cetera. That's one of the ways that we're expanding. But, personally, when I was in management, I was a part of the rookie seminars and rookie symposium that the NFL had back in the day. And I do a lot of it just in general without it being officially through Fritz Pollard or in general, like last year, Rashad Gary, the number one draft pick out of University of Michigan. I was one of his mentors, getting him ready for the draft and everything. So I've done a lot of that through the years. Kevin Colbert, the Pittsburgh Steelers general manager, and I are pretty much like best friends. And so I do a lot over in Pittsburgh with Kevin at the combine and various things. I go to training camp every year at the Steelers and talk to their guys and not even the players, but the coaches as well, young coaches and up and coming. They have the coaches internship, minority coaches internship that they bring in coaches and to work with staffs. And I gotta give back in the day the Detroit Lions an attaboy because we were so far ahead of the NFL back then. I'm talking the mid to late 90s,
right?
Where Ron Hughes, our player personnel director, we used to bring in young African American coaches to training camp and they sit right in and make decisions during training camp and all of that. And some of the guys have gone on to be very, very well respected coaches in the NFL, like George Wahop, a longtime offensive line coach. Charlie Strong, you heard Charlie,
yes.
University of Texas.
Yes.
And although Charlie Strong, David Culley, Tyke Tolbert, whose name is coming up again now. And so, I'm kind of drawing a blank on some of the guys, but we had every year we would bring African American coaches in and scouts to show them the business, and they spent all training camp with us, and that was over 20, 25 years ago. So now I'm glad that scenario has been adopted by the NFL, and now it's a league-wide kind of thing, and they do it. But we have done it internally for a long time. Kevin Colbert and the Steelers and myself and Ron Hughes and the old Detroit Lions staff back in the day.
Well, hey, once again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us here on the Extra Point on ESPN Denver 1600. And your leadership and that of Rod Graves, I think through Fritz Pollard Alliance will hopefully continue to promote and provide opportunities for minority coaches and scouts and front office executives. And I can tell you, just someone from a distance, we are extremely proud of the efforts that you all are putting out there. And even in this COVID environment, the fact that you're still ensuring that folks are taken care of, especially at this time of the season. We already had Black Monday, folks were fired and let go. And now, of course, a lot of the teams are out there conducting their interviews and ensuring that the best qualified individuals are being hired, but at the same time, making sure that qualified individuals, especially African American individuals, have an opportunity to those interviews. And it's folks like you and Rod who are making it happen. So thank you very much for being here. Hopefully you're kicking off the 2021 year in a good way. And we're hoping the very best for you in the year 2021. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we've had here Larry Lee, 1981 fifth round draft pick, center for the Detroit Lions, and also front office executive with the Fritz Pollard Alliance here on the Extra Point. Mr. Lee, thank you and have a great day.
Roland, thank you for the exposure, and thank you for your contribution and helping us be a part and try to make change. We appreciate you. Thank you.